My hot new neighbor girl flirts with my husband all the time and I'm too much of a coward to confront him, but it turns out I'm not the only one dealing with her. Hey everyone, 25/F here. So with summer coming up and vacation plans underway, I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling super insecure about my body. It's kind of hard to lose that winter weight when I'm sitting on my ass working from home all day. And it's even harder when I constantly compare myself to my totally out of my league and in perfect shape husband. I'll just call him Peter for this post, who's 27 as well and my high school sweetheart. And even then he got tons of attention from girls. I knew everyone talked behind my back about how crazy it was that he was with me, that I must be rich or just do whatever he wants in bed. Which yeah, the second part was true, but big deal. We really did love each other. And still do. But the attention he's been getting from our new neighbor, who I'll call Trixie, has my nerves just about shot. Trixie's a single 22-year-old with, how should I say this? Obviously fake boobs, and she loves to show them off. Her blonde hair is also obviously not natural, not that any guy in the neighborhood cares. It's like a parade of pervs going past the house on weekend afternoons when she's doing yard work in her skimpy outfits. Trixie moved into the house 8 months ago, and of course it was cold then, so the neighborhood had not yet seen her show. And that's exactly what her weekend gardening work was. She might as well have a stripper pole in the front yard under the tree instead of a swinging bench. It would start with her coming out in a white cut-off tank top and jean shorts, doing a little bit of weeding in the flower beds. Although during the 4th of July heat wave, she actually came out in a bikini. Then she'd mow the lawn. Of course there was a lot of jiggling involved with that. And finally, to cool off, she'd wash her little red pickup truck in the driveway. You can imagine the scene. She's nearly caused an accident a few times, out there with her soapy rags and beaming smile. But the problem is, before Trixie came along, Peter was the star attraction of the neighborhood. Doing all of our yard work shirtless in his old running shorts nearly caused a few crashes as well over the years, and now he had competition. Of course, I was the only one that felt like there was any competition. And it was Trixie herself that made me feel that way. Because I soon began to notice Peter and her talking more and more often at the fence line during their yard work. I knew it was only a matter of time before passersby assumed that they were actually the married couple and not us. If I came outside and stood by him, would they be confused? Dumpy old me and my work from home sweats? I know I'm just being self-conscious. Self-pitying even. But it's only natural to feel a little jealous when every time you look up, it seems your shirtless husband is talking to some big-boobed bimbo holding pruning shears. I was never an insecure person, so I honestly don't even know where all of this is coming from all of a sudden. Yeah, I've always known that Peter was out of my league looks-wise, but, I know this sounds bad, but I also always knew I was smarter than him. And I know this doesn't mean anything, but I'm the breadwinner of the family. I guess that's a part of it as well. Peter has been studying for the bar exam all spring and is hoping to finally take it at the end of summer. For the 3rd time, by the way. He says that if doesn't pass it this time, he's just going to give up and get a job working for his dad. I try to be supportive and I really feel like I am, but it's difficult when I don't feel like he's really giving it his all anymore. Maybe he just doesn't want it as much as I thought he did. Or as much as he thought he did. But finally, last Saturday, I saw something that made me finally decide to confront him about his little girlfriend Trixie. I was washing the crusty dishes he'd left in the sink for me when I looked up and out the window only to find the two of them together yet again. Our kitchen window overlooks the backyard, which is someplace she's never gone, at least not to my knowledge, and the sight was shocking. My brain was telling me that there was something added to this picture that shouldn't be here. But even more disturbing was what they did next. Or rather what she did and he readily accepted. A nice, big hug. A nice, big sweaty hug actually, considering it was 85 degrees with no wind and they'd both been working. The hug lasted just a second or two before Trixie turned and walked back to her pruning. I swear Peter hesitated for a moment, watching her walk away, before returning to the mulch. I wanted to scream. Instead I just decided to act like a passive-aggressive you-know-what for the rest of the weekend, something even my dopey husband finally took notice of around 9 o'clock Sunday night. He asked me what was wrong, why I'd been so quiet, all of the usual crap. Of course I didn't give him anything. I should have just let him have it, but I honestly felt like if I opened my mouth, I wouldn't be able to close it, and I wouldn't be liable for what came out. The thing is, and I've never told Peter this, or really anyone but my sister and a counselor, I've been cheated on before. And it was actually during my last relationship before him. And it was bad. His name was Edgar, and yes, that was his real name. And I'm saying it because screw him and I don't care who knows that he cheated on me when I was pregnant. Yeah, that's right. Edgar and I were actually engaged. Peter doesn't know that part either. I was 3 months along when I found the texts on his phone. He'd been cheating on me with some girl from his office. He was a software salesman. Looking back in hindsight, it was obvious the guy was a snake. But I lost the baby just a few weeks after. My doctors said it definitely could have been stress related, but who really knows in the end. So I guess I was kind of fibbing a little bit earlier when I said I want the insecure type. I didn't used to be. In college I was a lot more like Peter. I was free, taking the world as it hit me, rolling with the punches. I wasn't so paranoid, and I certainly wasn't so jealous. Or depressed, let's be honest. I exercised nearly every day, and wouldn't be caught dead going over my calorie limit. I'll be the first to admit now that it wasn't the healthiest outlook on my body. But neither is what I'm doing now, which is pretty much neglecting it completely. And I can totally tell that Peter has noticed. I don't think he thinks I do, but I can. And I have to tell you, it makes me feel like complete and utter crap. Especially when he seems one step away from making out with little Miss Trixie in our backyard. I promised myself that if there was anything else that happened, if I saw them hugging again, or doing anything other than just the normal chit-chat, I would finally be putting my foot down. Some helpful advice from my sister about keeping things quiet and letting them fester kind of opened my eyes. Especially when she brought up our parents' failed marriage as a prime example. But of course, this didn't convince me to do anything right away. I would have to see another sweaty hug or sweaty hug equivalent. Maybe it was my way of continuing to avoid the issue. In fact, I probably know it was. But if it was, then so be it. Maybe I am a coward, maybe I am fat, maybe I'm everything I'm afraid that I am. Okay, now I'm really getting into self-pity territory. I guess I just don't really know where I should go from here. There's another heat wave expected this weekend. Will Trixie grace the neighborhood with yet another driveway bikini modeling show? And if so, how will Peter react? And how will I react to his reaction? I guess I'll just have to sweat it out and see. Update 1. So, the heat wave came and went, and surprisingly, well, everything is worse than I could ever possibly imagine. I just knew that Peter was up to something as soon as we woke up Saturday morning when he kept putting off the lawn work. Every time there's a big heat spike like this, he always takes care of any outside stuff early in the day. I basically forced him to. My dad got heat stroke one summer when I was a kid while he was putting a new roof on our house. He somehow made it out with just a broken leg, but my mom never let me hear the end of it. Peter's never kicked up a fuss about it. In fact, he always agreed with me. But this time, I got some serious pushback. Of course, not directly. That wouldn't be Peter's way. If you thought I was passive-aggressive, my husband can't just come out and say anything. So instead he just kept putting it off all morning with little errands and tasks he supposedly just remembered he had to do. I guess he had to wait until 12 noon exactly to drag out the wheelbarrow, because that's when Trixie seemed to finally be up from her 10 hours of sleep. I'd never been close enough to her while she was working to tell for sure, but I'm almost certain that she wears makeup while she does it. She definitely was that day, and Peter definitely took notice. Usually they'd at least go through the motions of a few lawn tasks before stopping for their heart-to-heart, but this time, they made a beeline straight for each other. I decided on a dangerous experiment. I would suddenly remember an errand I had to run myself. I'd tell Peter that I was leaving, drive around the corner to the Waldens, and sneak back in through their backyard. Then I could see how those two acted when my prying eyes weren't around to see. My plan went off without a hitch. I was like a secret agent moving through the backyard, and a sly cat burglar creeping through the back patio door. Well, be careful what you wish for. Because right there on the kitchen table, right next to my dead grandmother's barnyard animal salt and pepper shakers, was Peter and Trixie were, well, you can only imagine. They didn't see me. And I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I tried to open my mouth to say something, say anything, do anything to make it stop. But the sight of my worst fears being confirmed simply froze me in fear. I thought I could handle the truth. Instead, I walked right back out the door and back to my car. I had seen something I couldn't avoid, and now I had to confront Peter about it. I wondered how long I should give them and decided who cares anymore, and went to my sister's and cried for the rest of the afternoon. When I finally got back in the evening, it seemed like Peter didn't even notice, or care why I'd been gone for hours. It's now 3 in the morning and I'm staring up at the ceiling, wondering how it all came to this, and where it all goes from here. Update 1. So, big news everyone. And I can't believe I'm saying this. Never in a million years, in fact. I'm getting a divorce. I know, big surprise, right? Well, it was certainly a big surprise to me, and definitely a big surprise to my parents. But when I explained the reason why to them, it wasn't very hard for them to understand. Let's just say they were on my side. Mom actually had to talk Dad out of going over to my house and beating Peter up. I guess some people just aren't who you think they are. For instance, I thought Peter was an honest guy. Obviously a bit of a flirt, but when you're a good-looking guy like him, you just kind of attract attention. The fact that he straight up lied and tried to gaslight me though, that was totally a step too far. It was totally unforgettable, in fact. I mean, the man literally stood there with a straight face and told me that I didn't see what I told him I saw. He literally said that I must have been hallucinating. How low can you possibly go? At least Trixie had the guts to admit it to me when I stormed over there and pounded on her door. She also admitted to me that she actually knew that I had seen them that day. But there was no apology. There was no remorse for being a total homewrecker. You know what? I've actually always hated that term. Any man who cheats on his wife is the real homewrecker. But the rage was just pouring through me. I wanted to strangle her right then and there. Instead I just pulled her mail out of her mailbox, ripped it up and ran back inside. I screamed for Peter to get out, and when I dragged his suitcase out of the attic and threw it at his feet, I think he finally started to realize that I meant business. He pleaded with me the entire time he packed, begging to let me stay. He finally relented from his position that it was all in my mind. Now it was all just a momentary lapse in reason. A moment of weakness. Well, I said, you must have been feeling pretty weak all summer. Look, I understand that no partner cheats in a healthy marriage. So I'm willing to admit that maybe my marriage wasn't as healthy as I thought it was. But one thing I'm not willing to do is to take half of the blame in this. Yeah, maybe I should have spoken up sooner. Not that it really matters now. So, I'm going to be filing for divorce. I guess there's some possible chance Peter and I could save this thing, but after you catch your husband on the kitchen table with a neighbor, any chance of wedded bliss is slim to none. We don't have any kids. I mean, what's holding us back? But a big problem is the house. It's in both our names. And the fact of the matter is, despite the two of them defiling my kitchen, I put a lot of work into this place. And guess what? I'm not giving it up without a fight. Even if Trixie still lives next door. And believe me, without my husband here, I can make her life a living hell if I want to. Update 2. So, as it turns out, I wasn't the only wife in the neighborhood that Trixie was making a fool of this past summer. And because of it, I'm not the only one who's getting a divorce. Not by a long shot. You see, our friend Trixie was actually sleeping with a few other guys on the block as well. And when their wives heard about what happened with Peter and I, they decided to finally follow up their long-held suspicions. I think pretty much every husband on the block became subject to an intense interrogation from their wives, guilty or not. But the guilty were apparently sniffed out pretty easily. So including me, there's now 3 divorces and counting due to Trixie and her meddling ways. And of course, our husbands as well. I don't know what's more pathetic, all of these guys falling for the same big-breasted blonde on the block, or all of them thinking they were going to run away with her. They all ended up having pretty much the exact same story. They were going to leave their wives and families, Trixie and them were going to run away together to Vegas and get married, and then it was happily ever after. I'm not so sure what Trixie's game plan was in the end. She obviously had an addiction to other people's attention, particularly men. Particularly married men. But surely she had to have known that her house of cards was going to tumble any day now. You can't sleep with half the neighborhood all summer and not expect it to get out. I just couldn't figure out how she found the time. But then I learned that Trixie didn't actually have a job. Her dad was rich and just started biting her houses as soon as she graduated high school. Must be nice. At least she has someplace to land now that the wives of our neighborhood have hounded her out of ours. Maybe if it's big enough, all the husbands who got kicked out can all come and live with her. Somehow I doubt that Peter would be okay with that. Oh well.